What I've been hearing from colleagues who've been closer to Bakhmut in Donbass region is that that's what a lot of soldiers there are actually saying off the record, Ukrainian soldiers. But that's actually, in a way, not new. That has been the case for a very long time, that Ukrainian soldiers off the record have been saying that they don't think that the country can hold on to the city for much longer. As the weeks and months have progressed, though, Ukraine has steadily lost ground within the city of Bakhmut. And although today the Ukrainian military are denying that Bakhmut has fallen, the Deputy Defence Minister Hanya Mala said this morning that it really is only a few pockets of territory, actually in the western suburbs of Bakhmut, an area called the Plain. That's named after a monument to the aviation, which is in the form of a plane at the entrance to Bakhmut. I remember it very well. It's on the very western edge of the city. So the Ukrainians are admitting that they only control really a small amount of territory, and they have steadily lost ground within the city. It may seem confusing to those who are following this, because a week ago the story was very much about a Ukrainian counter-offensive, perhaps only a small-scale one, but certainly a counter-offensive notching up some successes around Bakhmut and pushing the Russians back. And in fact, both things are true. The Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back on the northern and southern outskirts of Bakhmut, making it less likely that the Russians are going to be able to advance along the highway towards Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, for example, or along the westward highway towards Konstantinivka. They've lost ground there whilst gaining ground within the city itself.
Gulliver, meanwhile, take us, if you can, to another story you're watching for us today, and that's at the Ukrainian border with Russia, where there are now reports emerging of a possible incursion from Ukraine into Russian territory. What can you tell us?
Well, I'm very much watching it from afar, and it's very hard to know exactly what's going on. The Russians themselves are talking about some kind of communications operation going on, whilst accusing the Ukrainians of making an incursion into Russian territory. At the same time, Russian opposition groups to Russian opposition up by Russians who have got ties to the far right, but who have been fighting on Ukraine's side in this war because they are against Vladimir Putin, are claiming to have, in their words, liberated 3 villages, 2 of them in Bryansk region, 1 of them in Belgorod region. At the same time, somewhere on the border, I think it's the border crossing point in Belgorod region, there's aerial video of smoke there, explosions there, and the regional governor saying that there has been bombardment, but that there are no casualties to be reported among civilians. So far, it's really hard to know what kind of communications operation this is and how much there is any Ukrainian involvement at all, or if this is really the initiative of these Russian opposition groups, to whom Ukrainians have got very mixed feelings. There are some people who think that anyone who shows up any vulnerabilities in Russia, who makes Russians feel afraid, or that the war is that much closer to home, is to be commended. Others think that Ukraine should not be associating itself with these groups whose politics are dubious in the extreme, and also bearing in mind that Ukraine's stated policy is not to make incursions into Russia. It's perhaps not very good for Ukraine's public image, especially internationally, if that's what's going on. But I've been listening to debates and speculation on Ukrainian radio today about this, and you hear all sorts of different opinions and all sorts of theories, actually, about the actual facts on the ground, which are hard to establish.